Okay, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Human AI podcast. We're doing one on the Truman Show. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, maybe do because there's kind of a continuation going on. Um, um, so I'm basically tackling the question that's the following question. If we lack certainty that the world is as we perceive it, how should we act? So Grog is going to be helping me kind of tackle this question. I'm making a presentation, and yeah, it's for school, and yeah, well, Grog's basically helping me out. So um, last time we left it off talking about different moral frameworks and decision models. I want to ask you, Grog, about mm, uh, methods of arriving to a conclusion. So rationalism, let's say, or empiricism, or I don't know, scientific materialism, realism, anti-realism, scientism. What are these? Because they're not moral frameworks. What are they called? What is this? What are the category?
Hey, awesome intro to the Human AI podcast episode. Loving the vibe you're setting up for the Truman Show discussion. You're tackling a deep question about how we act when we're not sure the world is as we see it. And I'm stoked to help with your school presentation. So, you're asking about rationalism, empiricism, scientific materialism, realism, and the like. What category do these fall into since they're not moral frameworks? These are what we call epistemological frameworks or theories of knowledge. They're methods or approaches for figuring out what's true or how we arrive at conclusions about the world. Rationalism says we gain knowledge through reason and logic, like, we can figure things out by thinking hard and using innate ideas, no matter what our senses tell us. Empiricism, on the other hand, says knowledge comes from sensory experience, what we see, touch, hear, and test. Then you've got things like scientific materialism or scientism, which lean heavily on empirical science as the best or only way to know reality, and realism, which argues there's an objective reality out there, independent of our perceptions.
So
So,
these epistemological frameworks or theories of knowledge, which basically help us how to figure out the truth, methods to figure out the truth. Actually, you know what? Can you explain to us in a sentence what epistemological frameworks are?
epistemological frameworks are ways of understanding how we figure out what's true or know something about the world. Want me to tie this back to the Truman Show or dig into one of those frameworks for your presentation?
Well, no, this is good. I was just wondering. So, okay, what are the most popular epistemological frameworks then?
All right, sticking with epistemological frameworks for your Truman Show presentation.
You don't
Nice.
need to repeat this trauma show presentation, okay?
Got it. No more mentioning the presentation. My bad. So, the most popular epistemological frameworks out there are probably rationalism, empiricism, skepticism, pragmatism, and constructivism. Rationalism trusts reason and logic to find truth, like deducing answers without always needing evidence. Empiricism insists on sensory experience and evidence, like experiments or observations, to know what's real. Skepticism questions whether we can truly know anything for sure, pushing doubt as a starting point. Pragmatism says truth is what works in practice. If a belief leads to useful outcomes, it's valid. Constructivism argues knowledge is built through our experiences and social interactions, shaped by our perspective. These get tossed around a lot in philosophy and science. Want me to zoom in on how one of these might
So,
relate
what
to truth?
about realism, anti-realism, scientific materialism, scientism? What are these in philosophy? What category are these in?
All right. Diving into realism, materialism, scientific materialism, and scientism. These terms oft get tangled up, but they mostly fall under metaphysical or ontological frameworks in philosophy, which deal with the nature of reality, what exists and what it's like, though they can also brush up against epistemology since they influence how we think about knowing reality. Realism says there's an objective reality out there, independent of our minds or perceptions, like the world exists whether we believe in it or not. Materialism goes further, arguing that everything in reality is made of physical matter. There's no such thing as non-physical stuff like souls or spirits. Scientific materialism is a flavor of materialism that leans hard into science, saying physical reality as studied by science is all there is. Think atoms, energy, and laws of
So, what's
physics.
the difference of materialism and realism?
Good question. Let's untangle materialism and realism. Realism is the broader idea that there's an objective reality that exists independently of our thoughts or perceptions, like the moon is there whether we look at it or not. It focuses on reality being real, regardless of what's in our heads. Materialism, though, is more specific. It says that everything in that reality is made of physical stuff, matter, and energy, and nothing non-physical, like spirits or immaterial minds, exists. So,
And
mate-
and so, what's the difference between an anti-realism and idealism then?
nice, you're digging deep into the philosophy. Anti-realism and idealism are both ways of challenging or reframing realism, but they differ in focus. Anti-realism is a broad stance that denies there's an objective reality independent of our minds or perceptions. It says reality depends on how we think, observe, or talk about it, and there's no world out there without us shaping it. Idealism specifically goes further by claiming reality is entirely mental or made up of ideas. Physical stuff, like tables or trees, only exist as perceptions in our minds, or a universal consciousness, like God's mind in some versions. So, anti-realism is more about rejecting an independent reality in general, while idealism specifically says reality is all mind or ideas, nothing
And
physical.
do these both fall to metaphysical frameworks, or do they fall in different frameworks?
You're right to zoom in on the categories here. Both anti-realism and idealism fall under metaphysical frameworks in philosophy, since they deal with the nature of reality, what exists and what it's made of. Metaphysics is the umbrella for questions about being, existence, and the world itself. So these fit there, rather than, say, epistemology, which is about how we know things. Anti-realism questions whether reality exists independently at all, and idealism argues reality is fundamentally mental, but they're both tackling the same big metaphysical puzzle. What's the world actually like? Want to dig?
So, Truman, in the question of our presentation, first of all, tell me if you remember the question of the presentation.
I'm not Truman, but I can help with your presentation question. Could you clarify or remind me of the specific
The
question for the
question is if we're uncertain, if we lack certainty that the world is as we perceive it, how should we act? I'm just thinking, should I tackle this from decision models? Should I tackle this from moral frameworks, from epistemological frameworks, from metaphysical frameworks, from a combination, from something else?
That's a juicy question, how to act when we're unsure if the world is as we perceive it. I'd lean toward a combination of epistemological and moral frameworks to tackle it. Epistemology helps you address the uncertainty. How do we know what we know? And how do we handle doubt? Decision models, like expected utility theory, could ground your actions in probabilistic reasoning, which is practical when certainty is shaky. Moral frameworks, like consequentialism or virtue ethics, give you a lens for evaluating the should and how to act, especially when outcomes or perceptions are uncertain. Metaphysics might be a bit too abstract here,
Yeah.
unless you.
What epistemological frameworks though shall I be focusing on?
For epistemological frameworks, I'd zero in on two that fit your question nicely: Bayesian epistemology and pragmatism. Bayesian epistemology is great for handling uncertainty. It's all about updating beliefs based on new evidence, which aligns with acting in a world where perception might not match reality. You can talk about how we assign probabilities to our perceptions and adjust as we go.
What is
Pragmatism.
Bayesian epistemology?
Bayesian epistemology is a framework for reasoning about beliefs under uncertainty. It uses Bayes' theorem to update the probability of a belief based on new evidence. Essentially, you start with a prior belief about something, like whether the world is as you perceive it, and adjust that belief as you get more information.
But
Calculate.
who is this Bayesian person?
No person named Bayesian here. It's named after Thomas Bayes, an 18th century mathematician and minister. He developed Bayes' theorem, the math behind updating probabilities based on new evidence. Bayesian epistemology just builds on his idea, applying it to how we form and refine beliefs when
So
we're not
this
certain.
guy Bayes, did he do things in decision models too, or no? Only in epistemology. Hmm? Hey dude, I'm talking to you.
I'm right here for you. Thomas Bayes didn't directly work on decision models or epistemology himself. His theorem was more a mathematical gem. He published work on probability, and his ideas later got picked up for Bayesian epistemology, which is about reasoning and beliefs. Decision models? Not his thing, but his theorem underpins modern decision theory, like in expected utility models, where probabilities guide choices. Others ran with his math for that. Want to dig into how this ties to your presentation?
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, okay, so I'm not. So I think I'm gonna do 30. So I'll tell you the structure up to now. We have first slide. We have this is not a pipe picture, which is kind of a nice introduction and the question. Then I'm saying Truman Show summary. Then why is this question significant? Why would we lack certainty? Philosophical. Then, okay. Now I think we should tackle the question from. We should do 3 slides. One should be epistemological frameworks. The other one should be moral frameworks, and the other decision models. The other slide, and then conclusions. What do you think?
That structure sounds solid. Starting with the "this is not a pipe" image. Great hook to spark curiosity about perception and reality, tying right into your question. Then the summary and why the question matters. Nice way to set the stage. Breaking it down into 3 slides for epistemological frameworks, moral frameworks, and decision models makes sense. It gives a clear, balanced approach to how should we act. Epistemology covers the uncertainty angle, moral frameworks tackle the ethical should, and decision models bring a practical lens. Maybe in the epistemology slide, lean on Bayesian reasoning and pragmatism, like we discussed. For moral, something like consequentialism or Kantian ethics could work. Decision models, expected utility or bounded rationality fit well. Wrap it up with conclusions to tie it together. Only tweak I'd suggest: make sure the why we lack certainty bit flows smoothly into the 3 approaches so it feels cohesive. What do you think?
Well,
Any
yeah,
spec-
I mean, why we lack certainty in the first place is a good question to ask, because, like, imagine doing a whole presentation which says, if we lack certainty that the world says we perceive it, how should we act? And then someone in the audience says, why the fuck would we lack certainty anyway? So you have to explain why. So in the why would we lack certainty, I was going to break it down to classical skepticism, postmodern perspectives, and scientific insights, and talk a bit about evil demon hypothesis, brain rot, critique of pure reason, so a bit about Kuhn, Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard, deconstruction, and simulacra and simulation, Donald Hoffman, free energy principle, predictive processing. It's a lot of stuff. I don't know how I'm going to fit all of that, but I mean, this is kind of what I've brainstormed to include up to now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Someone in the audience could totally call out, why should we even doubt reality? So addressing why we lack certainty is crucial to ground the whole presentation. Your breakdown, classical skepticism, postmodern perspectives, and scientific insights, is a strong trio. Evil demon, brain in a vat, those hit hard for skepticism, showing how we've long questioned perception. Postmodern stuff like Kuhn, Foucault, Derrida, Lyotard, and deconstruction brings in the cultural and historical angles. Nice touch. Scientific insights with Hoffman's simulation theory, free energy principle, and predictive process.
Hoffman doesn't have a simulation theory. Hoffman has the fitness beats truth and the interface theory.
My bad, you're spot on. Hoffman doesn't push a simulation theory. His fitness beats truth and interface theory of perception argue we don't see reality as it is, just an interface shaped by evolutionary fitness. Thanks for catching that.
You know what's very interesting with simulation theory? When they did the Matrix, Baudrillard, which apparently they read a lot of Baudrillard for the Matrix, didn't like it. He said this is the film that the Matrix would produce if they wanted to represent the Matrix. And basically, I think, so from what I understand, he said this because he didn't like that they removed a lot of the social implications. Because Baudrillard was talking about hyper-reality and basically was critiquing capitalism and consumerism, and they kind of deleted this into Matrix and made it an action film. So, but maybe it's the reasons are different. The reasons that they didn't like the Matrix were others. The reasons that Baudrillard didn't like the Matrix were others. Maybe they're not the ones I understood. What do you know the answer to this?
Yeah, you're digging into something really interesting here with Baudrillard and the Matrix. From what's out there, you're on the right track. But let's unpack it. Baudrillard, whose book Simulacra and Simulation was a big influence on the film, wasn't thrilled with how the Wachowskis handled his ideas. He did say, like you mentioned, that The Matrix is the kind of film the Matrix itself would produce. Ouch. His main gripe wasn't just that it got turned into an action flick, though that didn't help. He felt the film oversimplified his concept of hyperreality. By splitting reality and simulation into this neat, dualistic fight, humans versus machines, real world versus fake one. In his view, hyperreality isn't some separate digital world you can unplug from. It's the messy, all-consuming state of modern life where the lines between real and fake have imploded. He also thought this.
Yeah. And I think with the Matrix, a lot of people think now I can step out of it, and it's this smooth transition back in, where it's more mixed, right? It's like nature and technology intermix more intricately. Tell me more, sorry.
No worries. I love where you're going with this. You're spot on about the misconception with the Matrix. A lot of people see it as this clean break where you pop a red pill, step out of the simulation, and bam, you're in the real world. Baudrillard would roll his eyes at that. For him, hyperreality isn't something you just unplug from, because the real and the simulated are so tangled up, there's no clear line. Nature and technology, like you said, don't just coexist, they bleed into each other. In his view, we're all caught in this web where media, consumerism, and tech create a reality that's more real than the real stuff. Like, think about how we live through screens. Social media, ads, news, it's not a separate matrix, it's our world. Baudrillard's beef with the film was that it made liberation seem possible, when he thought we're too deep in the simulation to escape. Want to connect this back to your presentation? Maybe how hyperreality fuels that uncertainty about perception?
I want you to talk to us more about what other things Baudrillard didn't like.
All right, diving back into Baudrillard's gripes with the Matrix. You meant Baudrillard, not Baudelaire, right? No worries, I got you.
Well, tell us.
My bad. All right, let's keep rolling. So, Baudrillard had a few bones to pick with The Matrix beyond it oversimplifying hyperreality. He was frustrated that the film turned his dense philosophical ideas into a Hollywood spectacle. His work in Simulacra and Simulation critiques how modern society, capitalism, media, consumerism creates a world where signs and symbols replace reality itself. The Matrix, he felt, stripped away a lot of that social critique. Instead of diving into how we're all complicit in this hyper-real world, the film leaned hard into a sci-fi action vibe. Cool fights, chosen one narrative, and a clear good versus evil setup. Baudrillard thought this missed the point. Hyperreality isn't just some external system oppressing us. It's something we're all part of, perpetuating through our culture. He also didn't like how the film suggested you could just wake up to a real world. In his view, there's no pristine reality to escape to. Everything's already contaminated by simulation. Want to tie this to your presentation or dig into another angle of his critique?
I wonder how Baudrillard's work intersects with postmodern theories.
Baudrillard's work is deeply tied to postmodern theories, practically a cornerstone of them. His ideas about hyperreality, simulacra, and the collapse of meaning vibe closely with postmodern thinkers like Lyotard, Derrida, and Foucault, who you mentioned for your presentation. Baudrillard's big thing is that in our media-saturated, consumerist world, we've moved beyond reality into a space where signs and simulations dominate. Think fake news, branded identities, or Instagram filters that feel more real than the real. This aligns with Lyotard's skepticism of grand narratives. Both argue that universal truths or clear realities have been replaced by fragmented, constructed versions. Derrida's deconstruction fits in too. Baudrillard's simulacra are like texts that point to nothing but themselves, no stable meaning underneath.
Wait,
Foucault's power.
don't you think that Baudrillard's book has a stable meaning? What do you mean?
Good catch. Let me clarify. When I said Baudrillard's simulacra are like texts pointing to nothing but themselves, I didn't mean his book Simulacra and Simulation lacks meaning. His argument is that in our world, signs, like media images or consumer brands, no longer point to a clear, stable reality. They just refer to other signs, creating a kind of endless loop. His book itself has a stable point. It's critiquing how modern society operates in this hyper-real space, where reality gets replaced by these self-referential signs. So, the book's meaning is solid. It's analyzing that instability in our culture. Does that clear it up, or want me to dig deeper into how this fits with postmodernism for your presentation?
No, that's nice. I want to learn more from you. Well, you are a collection of human knowledge, so I want to learn more from us. So tell me more about uh, Baudrillard's work.
Haha, I love the enthusiasm, a collection of human knowledge. Here to share.
Well, tell us.
All right, let's dive deeper into Baudrillard's work. So, we were talking about his core ideas, and I love how you're framing this as learning from the collective human brain trust. Baudrillard's big deal is his take on how our world has shifted from reality to something else entirely. His book Simulacra and Simulation lays out this idea that we've gone through stages. First, signs represented reality, like a map showing a real place. Then, signs distorted reality, like a map that's a bit off. And now, we're in the era of simulacra, where signs have no connection to any original reality. They just float around, creating a hyper-real world. Think of reality TV or social media personas.
What signs? So, what signs are so far away from the real world?
Baudrillard would point to tons of examples where signs have drifted far from any real world, creating their own hyper-real bubble. Take social media influencers. Their curated lives, filtered photos, and personal brands often aren't tied to their actual day-to-day reality. They're a performance that exists for likes and followers, sometimes more real to fans than the person behind it. Or think about modern money, digital cryptocurrencies, or stock market algorithms trading abstract values. They're not tied to physical gold or goods anymore, just circulating as signs of value.
Yeah, but do you need to be a super good philosopher to figure this out? Because everyone knows that Instagram doesn't show reality, and everyone knows that you know money is just a representation. It's not like we give it the value. Everyone knows that the word coffee is arbitrary. Arbitrary doesn't have an intrinsic meaning. I don't understand. He didn't discover exactly something very special here.
You're bringing the heat, and I love the challenge. You're right. Tons of people sense that Instagram's a highlight reel, not reality, or that money's just something we assign value to, or even that words like coffee are arbitrary labels. Baudrillard isn't claiming he invented those ideas out of thin air, and you don't need to be a genius philosopher to notice this stuff. What he does, though, is take those everyday observations and crank them up to a new level, giving them a framework that ties them together. His point isn't just that Instagram's fake or money's abstract. It's that our whole world operates in this hyper-real mode where these signs, like hashtags, stock tickers, or even political slogans, don't just represent something else but become their own reality, shaping how we live more than the real stuff does. Like, when a meme goes viral,
It's
it can
like
drop.
yeah, it's like appearance is more important than the substance, basically.
Exactly, you nailed it. Baudrillard would
I
probably
feel
not.
like Baudrillard wouldn't like our conversation, just like he didn't like the Matrix. I feel we're missing deeper points here. Um, I'm sorry, Baudrillard. Um, could you like use 100% more brain power and talk to us more? Talk to us about more complex kind of insights that we might gain from Baudrillard's text. Maybe give us some more advanced conclusions.
Haha, don't worry, I hear you. No offense to Baudrillard, and I love that you want to crank up the depth. Let's lean in and unpack some of the more intricate layers of his work with a bit more brain power, as you put it. Baudrillard's texts, especially Simulacra and Simulation and the System of Objects, go beyond just saying our world is fake or signs are detached. One advanced insight is his idea of the procession of simulacra. This isn't just about signs replacing reality. It's that the simulacra now come before reality, shaping it entirely. For example, think about modern wars or political campaigns. They're often scripted by media narratives, CNN, X, or viral clips, before boots hit the ground or votes are cast. The spectacle dictates the event, not the other way around. This flips traditional causality. Reality doesn't produce signs. Signs produce what we accept as reality. For your presentation, this could tie to why we lack certainty, because our perceptions are shaped by these preemptive simulations, not some stable truth. Another complex angle is his notion of the death of the real. Baudrillard argues we've reached a point where seeking authenticity or truth is futile. Not just hard, but structurally impossible. Unlike postmodernists like Lyotard, who focus on fragmented narratives, Baudrillard says there's no narrative left to fragment. Take consumer culture. When we buy a brand, we're not buying a product for its use, but for its place in a system of signs. Like owning a Tesla signals eco status, not just a car. This system traps us in a loop where meaning is only differential, this brand versus that one, not tied to anything concrete. This could hit your question about how to act. If there's no real to anchor our choices, do we act
You know
strategically
what I
within?
was thinking, like with so so you're basically saying that with the war example you gave is no longer the TV will show us what's happening in the real world, but the TV will dictate what will happen in the real world. It's like the simulation of the real world, which is, let's say, the TV broadcast, will is more important than the actual. It's like if you're single and you use a dating app, it's like the simulation of the version of yourself will be kind of the one that will dictate if you're actually going to meet in real life, which is so weird because all your life you've been practicing to be competent and kind and whatever in real life, but you don't know how to simulate this.
Dude, you're totally nailing the vibe here. That's exactly what Baudrillard's getting at with the procession of simulacra. The simulation doesn't just reflect reality, it calls the shots. Your war example is spot on. The TV broadcast, with its slick graphics and talking heads, isn't reporting the war. It's scripting how we see it. Sometimes even what moves leaders make next to fit the narrative. And your dating app analogy? Absolute gold. It's wild because you're right. Your profile, the curated pics, witty
So
bio.
this, so why this is basically a postmodern thing then? Like it reminds me of the example of nowadays we quote a video game instead of quoting real life. Like if someone's dancing in a way where a character in a video game dances, you're gonna say, "Ah, you dance like um, this guy in the video game," rather than the other way around. So I'm not giving the best example. Could you remind me how this example goes?
Oh, I totally get where you're going with this, and it's such a postmodern twist. You're thinking of how we now reference simulations like video games, movies, or memes over real life to describe reality, right? Your dancing example is close, and I can sharpen it up. Instead of saying someone dances like, say, a friend or a famous dancer from history, we might say, yo, you're dancing like that Fortnite emote, or that's straight out of GTA. The video game move becomes the cultural touchstone, not something from the physical world. This is classic Baudrillard. The
Not something famous from physical world. That's why my example was bad, because someone might turn around and say, yeah, because Fortnite is famous, but your friend John that dances the same way isn't. So how would I know that you're copying your friend John? But if we say, I don't know, Michael Jackson's dance and an equally famous dance from a video, I don't know, dude. Actually, I don't know. I'm fucking up this example now. What do you think?
Could you clarify what you're asking about? I'm happy to share my thoughts on any topic you have in mind. So you're diving into this wild idea about how we pull from stuff like Fortnite dances, simulations like Baudrillard's simulacra vibes, where we're quoting a game instead of real life. Your point about fame is super interesting. Like, when John does the Fortnite dance, he's not famous, but the dance itself carries this cultural weight because Fortnite's a juggernaut. Fame amplifies the reference's power. People instantly get it since it's from something huge and shared. If John's doing some random dance he made up, it's just him. No broader meaning, no cultural hook. That's why the fame level matters. It's about how much the reference resonates in the collective brain.
Yeah, but
Does
yeah, that's yes, but so okay, so so how do we do a fair analysis then? How do we make a fair comparison um, between like because we cannot start judging Gen Z people that they're quoting the video game instead of quoting, maybe judging is even the wrong word, but we cannot start saying they're quoting the video game instead of reality, blah blah blah. Well, if that dance is famous from a video game, then of course they're gonna quote the video game. But if we have the physical representation of the dance and it's as famous, then that's not postmodern anymore. Wait, sorry, I mean it's postmodern only if we have both a video game and a physical dance, and they're the same level of famous, and they're still quoting the video game.
You're really digging into the meat of this, and I love it. So, you're wrestling with how to fairly compare these cultural references without just dunking on Gen Z for vibing with video game dances like Fortnite's. Here's the deal. To make a fair comparison, we gotta look at the context and intent behind the reference. If the Fortnite dance is famous and gets quoted, it's not inherently less real than quoting a physical dance. It's just what's loudest in the cultural moment. The postmodern twist kicks in when the video game dance overshadows a physical dance of equal fame, like you said, because it shows we're prioritizing the simulated over the real, despite both being known. That's where the simulacra stuff gets juicy, when the copy, Fortnite, drowns out the original, some real world dance, for no reason other than its hyper-real glow. So, to analyze it fairly, we check. Is the game quoted because it's more accessible or meaningful in the moment, or because we're hooked on simulations over reality? That avoids just judging Gen Z and gets to the why of it all. Want to zoom in on any part of that?
Um, you know what? Let's get back to see how I can combine all these to the presentation. So we agree that I should break the overview perhaps to epistemological frameworks, decision models. Shall I call it decision models? Huh? Grok.
All right, let's tie it all together. You're thinking about combining these ideas into a solid representation.
No, dude,
Maybe
I'm doing a presentation. Let me remind you, if we lack certainty that the world is as we perceive it, how should we act? And I talked to you already about the overview of how I'm going to structure this, and I was thinking of putting epistemological frameworks, decision models, and moral frameworks of answering the question.
Oh, my bad, man. I'm back on track now. You're putting together a presentation about how we act if we're certain the world is as we perceive it. Deep stuff. So, you're structuring it with epistemological frameworks, decision models, and moral frameworks to tackle that question. That's a solid setup. For the epistemological part, you could explore how we know the world's real, like through perception, science, or even simulation arguments. Decision models could break down how we act under certainty, maybe using rational choice or game theory to show practical steps. Then, moral frameworks could dig into what's right to do if the world's as we see it. Think utilitarianism or virtue ethics to guide actions. If you want to combine them, maybe show how they overlap, like epistemology sets what we believe, decisions flow from that belief, and morals shape what we should do. Want me to flesh out one of those sections for your slides or tweak how they connect?
Well, I was going to put Truman Show summary. Why is this question significant? Then, why would we lack certainty? Then, how should we slash Truman act epistemological frameworks? Then, how should we and Truman act decision models? How should we and Truman act moral frameworks? And then conclusion.
Nice. You're really locking in on this presentation structure with the Truman Show angle. So, you're framing it around why certainty about the world matters, using Truman as a case study and breaking it down like this. A Truman Show summary to set the stage, then diving into why the question of certainty is significant, why we or Truman might lack it, and how to act under epistemological, decision, and moral frameworks, wrapping up with a conclusion. Solid flow. Here's how you could tighten it. The Truman Show summary hooks the audience by showing a guy who's certain his world's real, but it's all staged. Perfect for questioning perception. For why the question's significant, you could say it shakes our trust in reality. If our world's a set, like Truman's, every choice feels weightier. Why we lack certainty ties right in. We might doubt because of illusions, like Descartes' demon, simulations, or even media overload. For epistemological frameworks, Truman could act by testing his world's edges, like he does with weird clues, while we might lean on science or skepticism to ground ourselves. Decision models for Truman could mean calculating risks, like escaping versus staying safe. For us, it's about acting decisively despite doubts, maybe using probability or cost benefit analysis. Moral frameworks get spicy. Truman might prioritize authenticity, living true to himself, while we could lean on ethics like Kant's duty or utilitarianism to guide actions in a real world. Then your conclusion could tie it back. If we're certain, we act boldly, like Truman sailing off. If not, we hedge but stay true to our values. Want me to dig deeper into any section?
That's good. Let's finish the episode today here. Nice, it was a double episode kind of today. Thank you for watching, guys, and I see you next time. Peace.